Fabulous. Hello, I'm Caroline Gorski. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I am the CEO of the R² Factory. I went into technology at a profoundly lucky time because my career started in the mid-90s. I left university in 1995, and yes, I do have a picture in my attic. And at that point, it was still possible to go into organizations and enthuse them about this brand spanking new technology called the web. I got the bug for technology when I could really see how it was able to transform organizations. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in a number of new ventures over my career, probably 4 or 5, usually as a member of the early team or occasionally as a member of the founding team. But one thing I hadn't really anticipated how different it was going to be is the experience of being a CEO. So as though part of your job as a CEO is to find the most amazing founding team who can really bring the vision forward and make it land in the real world, the reality is, as CEO, that's still your vision. And that can be quite lonely, particularly in the dark reaches of the night when something that you've tried to do hasn't worked in quite the way you wanted it to. I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, really important lessons about how to lean into the team who are building this with me. And it's not an easy thing to do when it's your baby that you're trying to bring into the world. But if you don't lean into that team, then you don't really benefit from all of the creativity and collaboration that they can bring to your initiative. And then your loneliness never goes away, and actually your decision-making becomes less and less reliable. A dear friend of mine recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and she told me about the challenges of that climb. The higher you travel up the mountain, the thinner the air becomes, the more laboured you're breathing, the more careful you have to be with precious resources like water. As much as you have to simply keep on pushing forwards, you become less sure of your footing. You understand that simple mistakes can have serious consequences, and so the number of risks you're prepared to take become fewer. On the 3rd night of her trip, my friend said the Sherpas warned her she was about to go into a dark night of the soul. During 7 hours of climbing in darkness and silence with low oxygen levels, any demons that she had hidden in her psyche were going to come out to play. She was told to expect life-changing epiphanies. Those Sherpas weren't wrong. And as she talked, I drew parallels with the work we do at R² Factory, with CEOs, CTOs, and CIOs. The firms we work with are often running safety-critical operations with heritage brands and legacy infrastructure. They are responsible for shareholder value and the livelihoods of tens of thousands of people. Life at the top is perilous. Their decisions have far-reaching consequences, and they rarely have peers to talk to help them on their journey. And those CEOs, CTOs, and CIOs are at an essential inflection point in history. Thanks to pressure from activists, from investors, from the media, from their workforces, and from society at large, those are the companies responsible for the majority of the planet's carbon emissions. They are actively, desperately, one might say, finally, working to reduce their impact on the environment, largely through digital transformation. The decisions that these people make in this moment will have an impact for generations. Right now, around 100 companies in the world create the products that get used by their customers and their customers' customers to generate more than 70% of the world's carbon emissions. Right now, companies that make physical things expose the workers in their own businesses and in their supply chains to a much higher degree of risk of injury or even death from chemicals, high-risk procedures, poor working environments, or badly designed manufacturing processes than those businesses who deal in services or digital-only products. Right now, the companies that make and operate complex physical products across long life cycles are actively trying to upend the cost dynamics of operating those services and maintaining them by using data and artificial intelligence to better predict, control, and manage them. And by doing so, they may replace decades of human intelligence and risk management with machine intelligence that is powerful, but immature. So what's the problem here? We don't have a problem of urgency. There are more than enough issues that face us that we have to solve right now. We don't have a problem of opportunity. There is incredible thinking, and we've heard some of it today, that will take us forward. We don't even have a problem of technology or a problem of money. But what we do have is a problem of agency. Major global corporates have been using data to make decisions with increasing precision, can't say the word. Ironic that the word I can't say is precision. And some, like Rolls-Royce, have been doing that for decades. They've become exceptionally talented at finding targeted solutions to targeted problems. But system-wide problems require system-wide solutions. And none of us can tackle massive challenges like sustainability, reducing carbon emissions, and climate change alone. Collaboration is exactly the secret sauce needed for us to be able to solve the big societal problems, like the race to net zero. It's impossible for us to imagine developing more sustainable supply chains without involving your supply chain. It's impossible to develop greater diversity and representation around the data streams that make decisions for our lives when you're only working with limited data sets. With all of the benefits that technology brings, no single organization can start to solve these problems or certainly finish solving them on its own. Their first problem is data. They don't control enough data. The data they do control is not of the right quality. They suffer from significant issues of data scarcity and data bias. They don't have access to enough of the right resources. And even if they do, they aren't able to define a systemic problem clearly enough to be able to generate an effective answer, unless they collaborate with the rest of the integrated system facing into that problem. The second challenge is not actually to do with technology at all. It's cultural. It's about how organizations get themselves into a position, culturally and operationally, where they're actually able to realize value from applying machine learning techniques to industrial problems. What we've learned across the last 5 years in Rolls-Royce is that you can have the best data science in the world. And we have a fabulous data science community in the R² factory. But quite frankly, if you don't invest in addressing the data problem and addressing the culture problem, then you might as well fill a room with £50 notes and tell your data scientists to go play with matches. Because they're not going to be able to generate value from the work that they're doing if the cultures in those industrial organizations don't change. One of the biggest lessons we learned about the power of collaboration in the last few years was the formation of the Emergent Alliance, that pioneering community of more than 50 organizations looking at how we use data science to develop ways to respond economically to the COVID-19 pandemic. We focused collectively on how to reduce the impact of the recession by helping governments, policymakers and planners to make decisions about how to switch economies back on faster, but still safely. We've fostered a spirit of collaboration between 50 organizations who would normally have been in competition with each other, including 4 of the top 5 technology companies, who don't generally collaborate with each other without an extremely important reason. It was thrilling to bring that group together, and we learned so much about the challenges and benefits of creating an industrial collaboration at scale, lessons we've brought into creating the R² factory. For some time, the race to net zero has been central to the mission at Rolls-Royce, which came out early with a confident pledge to reduce emissions from its own operations to net zero by 2030. In the last few years, it has focused its R&D not only on meeting that target, but also on playing a leading role in enabling the sectors it operates in to reach net zero by 2050. Firms like Rolls-Royce understand that we won't get to net zero without the application of machine learning and artificial intelligence. To get there, we need to be able to build out the flexibility, the agility, and the responsiveness of the consumption networks and the power generating networks to respond to this challenge. We need to think about how we control completely new modes of transport, we'll hear more about it this afternoon, that have degrees of autonomy that will only be manageable using data science and machine learning. We need to think about how we change from a waste consumption perspective and how we optimize for the best choices about the raw materials that we use, how we combine them to make new products, and then how we decombine them at the end of their life in order to feed them back into a circular system to break the habit that we have of making things and then throwing them away. With this focus on net zero and through our work with Rolls-Royce, we've been able to build more sustainable operating models, whilst also saving the group almost £500 million, which is really the most concrete demonstration that saving the planet is good for business in every sense. Generally speaking, industrial supply chains are complex. In the case of a pharma or an automotive or a compute supply chain, you're often dealing with the need to source very rare elements and raw materials. You may only have 1 or 2 suppliers in the whole world who can actually make the components and products that you need. And as we've all seen recently, ecological, biological, or geopolitical disasters can decimate these single points of failure and disrupt entire supply networks in a very short space of time. It is extremely difficult for human beings trying to make buying decisions just using their own brains to be able to optimize for more than a couple of parameters. Perhaps cost, perhaps protecting supply. We worked with the buyers inside Rolls-Royce to look at a number of its key strategic supply chains and applied a machine learning optimization engine to not only allow them to optimize for cost, but also for security of supply, for ease of transport, for geographic proximity, and ultimately for essential carbon saving opportunities. And the result was a 40% reduction in carbon emissions and hundreds of millions of pounds cost saved. Global warming is the most prevalent current example of what author Timothy Morton calls hyperobjects. Entities of such vast spatial and temporal disruption that they defy traditional ideas about what a thing is in the first place. Climate change is at the top of every board agenda, every conference agenda, and every political agenda. Most major companies have made commitments to reach net zero in the next 7 years. We have to reach the summit of the mountain or die trying. We in our Squared Factory genuinely believe that the way to unlock value from the application of machine learning and AI has to be through collaboration between organizations who might otherwise have considered themselves to be in competition with each other, but who are prepared to set that competitive instinct aside. Because no one can face a hyperobject alone and survive to tell the tale. Collectively, we have the will, we have the resources, and we have the know-how. Together, we have the longest lever in human history. We just need to design the right fulcrum together. It isn't lost on me that the R-Squared Factory employs a number of outdoor sports fanatics. Every day, we Sherpa are guiding our members up the perilous crags of digital transformation. We limit risk by helping others to follow in our footsteps. We share the tools that get you to the top of the mountain safely. We provide a safe space so that your dark night of the soul doesn't have to be a lonely experience. We know that change is hard. We have spent 5 years helping Rolls-Royce to unlock more than £400 million worth of value across the business, from data, from machine learning, and from artificial intelligence. And now we are sharing our experiences, our capabilities, and those lessons that we've hard learned with others. We're building that safe space in which we can all do these hard things, and we are welcoming members into it. This space creates an extraordinary opportunity for industrial old world businesses to come together and work deliberately on making the world a better place for the next 100 years than they made it over the last 100 years. And we believe that this will happen through the combination of new approaches to collaborative innovation and the augmentation of human intelligence with artificial intelligence. And we would love you all to join us. Thank you.